Impact, influence, that's what this is. I'm here just to keep this thing moving, but I got to let you know, as the son of a coach and having a mom and dad who stood on stage for years and years serving FCA, the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, it's incredible when you look back on your life and you remember the moments when somebody was there for you. So today, hearing you talk, Steve, and getting to know you now in person after seeing you on TV screens for years, these two gentlemen right here have made a profound impact on my life. And so while you got to hear their faith today and hear their testimony, and you got to figure out that Darren can sing a lot better than he can hit his driver, that's for sure. I went through a really tough spot about 3 or 4 years ago. I was married. I had a 2-year-old, and my wife decided that she had had enough of our marriage, and so she left. And I changed careers as a result of that, full-time, got out of TV, started teaching and coaching golf because I had to be there at 4:30 to pick her up after preschool. And this guy right here, every single time I needed him, showed up and met me in the gaps. They're real people, you know. They get out on the court and they do their thing, or they stand up here and share their faith, but there's just ordinary dudes like me out there that they fill in for. My dad coached 25 years in the NFL. He's known this man for 40 years, but the highlight of our family's life in coaching in football was the year that my dad was the offensive coordinator for my younger brother Luke's high school state championship team. Now, he was the highest paid coach in college football, or excuse me, high school football that year, because the Tampa Bay Bucks are still paying him because they just fired him. But the point is that Ed showed up in Nashville, Tennessee, got in a car and drove to Murfreesboro, and he and I stood in the stands pacing as my dad was in a booth calling plays for a high school state championship game that my brother coached in and won. And it was so incredible to me to see a guy like that who'd been in our lives forever. You know how many people flew in and went to that game and celebrated that with our family? One guy, he's right there. They make an impact on your life, you know. Those are things I'll never forget. So it's fun to see them and transcend what they've done on the court. But, man, when you make an impact on somebody's life in a personal way, you just don't ever forget it. So with that being said, I'm just so humbled to be here, and I'm thankful for you guys. Let's get to this. This is fun. Let's start it off with you, Ed. Was the LeBron play in the finals a block or a charge?
That was actually an easy play. And to me, referees, we work by our instincts. And the instinct on the play, Kenny had the play right. To me, it was an illegal guarding position. He called offensive foul. Now, you can use all kinds of angles, and that was so close that we could eventually build a case for the play to be a block. Eventually you could get there. But we have to understand that we're not machines. We referee by instincts. Kenny Mauer's got probably as good a judgment as anybody, especially in the lead position. He's one of the strongest lead officials in basketball. And he got the play right based on his instincts. And if you look at it, was it a block or a charge? Well, maybe one way or the other by that. And I'm going to go with Kenny Mauer's instincts.
There it is. Yep. So this is a great question. Pat, why don't you take it? What are some practical ways that you can demonstrate your faith with your crew each game? Is there a pregame prayer? Is there a moment where you can kind of step out in front of them and let them know who you are if maybe they aren't following the same path in life you are choosing? What would you say to that question?
I think the best way we can do it is just to be an example. Our actions speak the loudest, and when we get that eventual opportunity to actually discuss it or talk about it, I do take that opportunity, but I think being an example is the most important.
Dan, how about you? What do you think, Deej?
For me, I didn't take it to the locker room until really this last season. It was kind of a separation of church and arena. And it's crazy how just being open to the opportunity of when you sense a need or you sense a conversation is just not being afraid to mention faith and not being afraid to mention God. And it's still there sometimes. I mean, like Steve was talking about, just in a prayer of grace in public. I mean, those opportunities had been there in the past, I'm sure. But I would never take it. If it's not me, I'll let somebody else do that. But now being open to those opportunities, they just happen over and over again. And it's not anything that I look to do. I'm recognizing them now, and I'm stepping up.
That's good stuff. Steve, let's move to you on this one. Obviously, today you guys have come here and shared your faith and embraced who God is in your life and how you're trying to follow Jesus. But what's one piece of advice that you might give to somebody who's just struggling with taking that step with God, with faith, with incorporating that into how they officiate or is who they are as in their identity?
You can take that a number of ways. Number one is trust. I think letting go. A lot of times we put this officiating as number one. I know I did for a number of years. That was the most important thing in my life. And when things don't go a certain way, or you're not moving up, or you're not where you think you want to be, and you go, oh my gosh. But Pat probably hit on it early in his talk about the ego, about trying to have that under control. Easier said than done. Don't get me wrong. Easier said than done. But if you can check that ego and control and just know that maybe I'm not meant to be the crew chief. Maybe I'm not meant to be a pro referee or a college referee. And let's see where it takes me. I know, like in my career, I still remember that last year in the CBA, I almost quit because I thought, well, maybe I'm just destined to be a college referee, but I, persisted for another year. And then, okay, fine. But my mind even at that time was like, well, maybe that's not my goal. I think sometimes we put too much identity on, too much importance on what we do in life, especially men. An NBA referee. Guys get, here I go on a tangent. When I get older, I get off on a tangent sometimes. Guys get involved, they fall in love with the logo. And by that, I mean, it's supposed to mean so. I would tell people, I'm lucky. Guess what? Don't get me wrong. I'm blessed. I'm lucky to make my living in sports. There's no doubt about it. But guess what I do? I blow a whistle and call fouls on millionaires. And that's what got me to the point in my faith, because I said, I want to leave this world better than when I came in. I got to do something for the Lord because he's blessed me with doing this kind of job. And I think we put too much importance on what we do instead of how can we affect the people around us? How can I make this place a better place? And how can I, when I leave, that when I go face to face, he said, you know what? You did a pretty good job, bud. That's all.
Yeah, it's a great answer. It's a great answer. There's a book called The True Measure of a Man where it talks about the character and the integrity and what true identity is found in, and it's exactly what you're talking about there. I get to travel about 15, 18 times a year and work for Fox, and during college football season, I'm out hosting, doing sideline reporting. So I'm on the road not nearly as much as you fellas have been in your career, Ed, and then throughout these seasons, guys, as you still work. And this is a great question, so I think that the people would love to hear it because I think it's a tough one. It's a tough question. What are some boundaries that you have to set in place to protect your marriage when you're on the road and you're traveling during the season? Because there's a lot of nights away from home. Deej, what do you think?
What I can tell you is the devil is good at what he does. And he has a vested interest in the decisions that we make. Just as much as God has a vested interest in the decisions that we make, so does the devil. And he knows our weaknesses. He knows where we are susceptible. And so do we. If we're being honest, so do we. So for me, I don't put myself in a position where I'm going to have to be strong enough to resist the temptations that the devil can put in front of me. And I put myself around people that I know won't drag me into those situations. And because I'm not going to pretend to be man enough to resist whatever temptations are out there if I just go strolling right down the middle of all of them. I'll claim not strong enough, and I'm not going there, and it doesn't put me in those spots.
Yeah, it's good. Great stuff. Pat, how about this one? What are some things that you used or some ways that you got your spouse on the same page about officiating?
About officiating? The most beautiful thing about her and officiating is she could care less. Could care less. Not every 2 weeks she likes it, but she could care less about officiating, and it's a haven to come home to. The 5 days a month I get to come home. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Steve, how about you? I mean, the thought of just being on the road and being gone, and the advice you might give to somebody who's wanting to make this a career, but maybe a spouse is saying, I'm not certain this is a good idea.
No, that's great. And my wife's just like Teresa. My wife couldn't care less about officiating, doesn't know much about officiating or basketball, and like you said, doesn't mind it every 2 weeks. That's a good one, Pat. It's not easy. It's a gypsy lifestyle. It really is. It's a gypsy lifestyle. I think when you get into a marriage, you have to, if someone's coming into that, you have to talk about it and be open and honest. It's a series of adjustments because when I go on the road, it's all about me. What time do I get up? What time do I eat? What time is my flight? What time do I want to take my nap? It's all about me. When I come home, and I said before, I never was blessed with children, so it's even more difficult because I know that you have to spend time with the kids too. When you come home, now it's got to be about her, and you have to adjust. And then, so you have this, during the season, all about me, we're away from each other. Then all of a sudden the summer comes, and now you're together again. And it's like, oh my gosh, now I'm invading her space. It's really adjustments that you really have to have a lot of communication. You have to have a woman who's so strong, and I know I'm so blessed to have that in Mary Ellen, that she didn't, it's funny because we talked, I forgot how I worded it before, Mayor. It was like something like, she not allowed me to do it, but she accepted it. She didn't always like it because you're going to miss weddings, you're going to miss funerals, you're going to miss birthdays and holidays and so on. But you know what? The spouse has to know that, and you have to accept it.
You know, I worked at a time where I was only away 13, 15 days a month, but because of all the hundreds of officials we have in Court Club, I end up counseling officials about this. This is the main topic. And so first question I usually ask is, well, all right, let's line up your priorities. Now be real. What's most important? What's most important? Look at it, think about it, pray about it. If refereeing is anywhere in 1, 2, or 3, I would say take a deep breath and re-examine. That's, I think, when it becomes dangerous. That we have, and many times have said to people, encourage them really away from professional basketball, because in the college game, at least you can have certain dates that are important and you can prioritize your time. And when you can't, it's painful to be away. When your kids are doing things, when you've had special holidays, it hurts sitting in that hotel room. And so we counsel people all the time to take a good hard look. And you know, many times I will steer people away from the professional game because there is more flexibility in your life, and you can do a better job of arranging priorities in the college game.
Yeah, that's a great answer. There's nothing like the pressure, you know, the final seconds of a game, and when you're on the court and you're officiating, you're right there in the battle and in the middle of it. How do you prepare yourself, Pat, for performing your best in a pressurized moment?
To me, it's all about habits and routines, and I know Ed teaches a lot about routines and habits, so I know we're on the same page there. But it's you know, Joe Crawford, we mentioned Joe earlier, he always says, you know, what you do in November and December, you're going to end up doing in April and May. And I haven't seen June yet, but I think it applies to June as well. So it's about habits and routines.
Yeah. Steve, what would you say? How'd you pick up on that?
Yeah, I really believe it's what you've done prior to those last 5 seconds. It's how much time you spent with film. It's how much time you spent in the rule book. It's how much time you spent about mechanics, all that stuff, so it becomes almost second nature. That doesn't, my dad once taught me, and my father officiated 30 years in the NFL with 4 Super Bowls, and one of my main mentors, he said, if I could teach somebody to concentrate for that full, 60 minutes in football, he says they could be a great referee. So you have to make sure that enormity of the moment doesn't get into your mind. You push that out and you push the concentration and your training in.
Yeah, that's great stuff. Super Bowl 34, Kevin Dyson came up 1 yard short of the goal line as the Titans were trying to beat the Rams, and my dad called that play. And afterwards, I recall there were several moments and several players who were frustrated because they knew that Kevin Dyson did not run the route the way that play was designed for him to run it. He cut it off short. And if he continued his progression, maybe he would have fought and battled across the goal line. But in that moment, not a single player or coach called him out in the locker room after that game. And still to this day, I don't think that there's really been anyone publicly who's ever challenged him on why he did not run the route 7 yards. He cut it off at 5. So as a crew, you're only as good, really, as all of you on the court. So Ed, Deej, run with this one. How do you maintain the loyalty even when you're struggling with maybe a way a guy's performing on the court?
As far as being a teammate and your fellow official is having a tough time, I think that the biggest thing I find, and Steve is really good at this, is that you want to find things that person's doing right. Steve was a master at going to the locker room at halftime, and when we had the ability to reconstruct plays and then eventually reconstruct them via video, he would go to his place, take all the pressure off of people. He would always say, hey, I didn't do this, I got to do this, we got to fix this. And so all the pressure was off, and then it was a freedom, because what it comes down to is that people's confidence get eroded at times because they get beat up. And when you're around somebody who is like, hey, we're good, you can only find that within your own personality. But people that do that, they're the great ones. They're the best officials in basketball are the ones who their partners always grade out better when they're with them. And statistically, it shows over and over again.
Deej?
It's something that Pat and I have talked about, and he taught me that, it may be that your partner might be missing plays, and that could throw the game off a little bit. But it could also be that your partner's stepping on your ego, and that can also throw the game off a little bit. That can also throw off crew dynamics. And in my early years, I would jump right in the middle of that in a locker room or in the car ride back to the hotel. But one of the greatest takeaways that I've had in 8 years of teaching camp is, even if I am upset, my partner's never going to know it. I'm going to be the best partner no matter what's gone on the floor that I can possibly be. If we kick a play, we kick the play. It's never his play, it's our play. Monty McCutcheon is also a guy that I just respect immensely. And one of the things he taught me is he never mentions a name in a game report. If there's a play missed, trail, center, or lead, it's never Steve, Ed, or Pat could have got that. Trail, center, lead. There's no finger pointing. There's just, I'm big enough to take whatever it is that happens and keep this crew together. But it was all about ego. Put the ego away, recognize the ego that might be coming at you, stave that off, put that ego at ease, and you've got a chance to walk out of there. And if they know they've stepped on your toes and they know you never reacted and they're driving, you know what? That's a pretty good partner. He's a pretty good partner to work with.
Yeah, good stuff. Couple final thoughts here, and then we'll close this thing down. As a broadcaster, as an official, a referee, as a coach, as a player, obviously everybody's human. Nobody's going to be perfect. There may be a moment where you may miss one. Question comes in, it says regrets, ? Do-overs you would like? And if so or if not, how do you get to the point where you keep moving forward? Because if you're your own worst enemy, beating yourself up, or the tape and the film you review every night is making you just crazy to walk on the floor the next time, how do you get over regrets or not have them and then keep moving forward?
I will tell you that the number one regret that I have is I just finished year 18 in Division I basketball. And for probably 17 years, and there's guys in here that I've worked with and have known for a long time. And for probably 17 years, if you were to ask them, hey, is Darren a believer? Or is Darren a man of faith? A lot of them would probably say, I don't really know. That's the number one regret that I have. Is for 17 years, I had an opportunity to make that impact that we talk about. For 17 years, it never entered the locker room. But the way that grace is and mercy is, unfortunately, God's not into recycling. His mercy's new every single day. And so for me going forward, I don't have to worry about the last 17 years. I just get to think about the next day coming. And I threw this at Pat. How is that we are up here? I'm the wrong guy to be sitting up here talking to anybody about faith. And I said, Pat, do you get that feeling as we're starting this? And he made a statement that I promise you, I will say this more the next year than any other statement. He said, listen, every saint has a past. Every sinner has a future.
No, I was going to say, you're here because he wants you here. That's why you're here.
That too.
You know? God, you, sir, you get out of the line.
I don't play golf. Instead, I coach football. And it's my 14th year coaching college football below the Division I level. But so we try to teach our quarterbacks and skill players to have a mistake recovery strategy. There's some steps that you go through. Now, we know in our Christian walk, and eventually you try to get those conversations around to, hey, what would God want you to do, and how can you give it up, like we talked about at the cross. But in life and officiating, I think there is a intentional and a purposeful mistake recovery strategy that you can build in. God has it. He showed you the whole plan here, but we can have it in officiating while we're on the floor. You know, the breathing techniques and all the things that the mental coaches teach today. And, you know, it's kind of critical, and it really is scriptural if you follow the path.
Yes and yes, and I don't want to, regurgitate what you guys just said, and I agree 100% with it wholeheartedly. Since it's to the end, I'll end it with a quick story. I have one regret on the floor. I don't have many regrets. I think I've been blessed in my life with so many mentors and good people and so on that everything comes along. My father used to always say, make sure as a referee you have a short memory, that when you miss that play, you can forget it. It's over. You can't do it. And you have to have a strong mentality for that. But the one regret I have, a play I called, oh my gosh. Ed, I don't think you were the boss. You were working still. It was in Indiana. Portland's playing Indiana. It's the only time I ever did this in my career. Now you know, you'll know why. So it's when the days of Cliff Robinson, Portland, and the Jailblazers, okay? Trailblazers, that's what it is. And so anytime you saw Portland on your schedule, this was on the road, but anytime you saw Portland on your schedule, right, you just went like, oh, jeez. Well, it's the Reggie Miller days, too, of Indiana. So we're in Indiana, and I still remember, it's right before halftime, fast break. Derek McKee's playing for Indiana. Coming down the fast break, I'm going trail to lead. Here comes Cliff Robinson trying to block the shot, one-on-one, and I don't anticipate the play, I anticipate the call. And put air in the whistle, and as soon as I put air in the whistle, there's a great block shot. There's no contact at all. The only contact's with the ball. I come out and I said, I got a choice here. It's the first time I ever thought this way. I go, but I think in the back of my mind, I thought maybe it was like, I'm sorry, Cliff Robinson was on offense, McKee's on defense. That's important, because right by the Portland bench. So Cliff Robinson, pardon me, on offense, Derek McKee for Indiana on defense, right by the Portland bench. And I just decided, no, it's not a foul. I said, I can't, it's so obvious that I kicked this play. I was so horrible. And so I said, my mistake, jump ball, inadvertent whistle. Well, you can imagine how receptive that Cliff Robinson and the Portland bench was. They were like, you should do that, Steve. Yes. No. It's like, and they're going, and I go, jump ball, any two, center court. And I'm just sitting there, and I'm taking some heat big time. There's no doubt. But I'm saying to myself, it's the right thing. It was such a bad call. I can't believe I did that. So we give it to midcourt, and if my luck was with me that night, of course Portland would get the ball back, and everything's fine. I'm telling the story because Portland did not get the ball back, and Indiana scores off the tap. And then Portland calls a timeout, and Cliff Robinson starts going up one side of me and down, and I got to hit him with a technical foul. And as soon as he passes by, Rick Adelman, who's the coach, I have to hit him with a technical foul. That's not the end of it. As they part, the radio announcer.
Steve was famous for those guys.
Radio announcer sitting at the table, standing up, I see this, throws his headset down and getting his big joke shot. I couldn't control my temper too well as a young guy. And I go walking right over to the guy, and we had this, high school conversation. Yeah, you this, you this, you this, you that. Finally, and the guys, I said, you're off the table. So I go get the PR guy for Indiana. Pardon me. Get the PR guy for Indiana. He's a young kid. I go, come here. He says, get him off the table. The microphone was live at the time we were arguing, and just about every word had to be bleeped. They showed it on ESPN, and it was just like, you know, when they show like the EMTs coming, they say 911 callers. Well, all the words you could see with our conversation was the, you, are. That's about it. All the proper nouns were left out, okay, and descriptive adjectives were left out. So I regret like changing that call. I really- Yeah, right.
I'm not following that. I'm not following that.
Good call. Yeah, good choice. Guys, to finish it up here, I think it would be great. 30 seconds or a minute each. The one lasting thing that you want people to go home today hearing from you when it comes to the impact that you believe they can make on people by getting in that uniform and being a ref in life?
Everywhere you go, every step you take is an opportunity to be that impact. And if you're willing and you're open to those opportunities, they will come one right after another. You don't have to go hunt for them. Just witness as you go. The plan will take care of itself.
You were here for a reason. There's tremendous takeaway. Steve talked about the chair. I would really encourage you to think about what you heard today. What was the most important thing that you heard today? What can you do that you have not been doing? Something different that you have not been doing. Another step in your faith and action. Go to that chair and ask God to help you with that. Write it down on a piece of paper, what that would be. Powerful takeaway from what was being said in this room today. And I think a tremendously unique opportunity to do just that. Thank you also for hanging with the AARP guy. I really enjoyed being here.
No, I look at it that way too. And I learned something from you guys because, as I said, you took your time. I'm doing this because I was excited and these guys asked me to do it. You didn't have to be here, and you are. So that tells me the kind of people that you are. So my advice is continue to be the people that you are. You seem to be givers. You seem to be serving. And as long as you know what? As long as you serve other people, you serve your relationship, your spouses, your loved ones, and put them first, as Christ put everybody else first. And you'll be surprised. When you humble yourself, as he says, you'll be exalted.
The only thing that popped into my mind was when Jesus was asking Peter repeatedly if he loved him. And Peter said, of course I do. You know I do. And he said, well, then take care of my sheep, tend my flock. And this is the flock that we've been put into, the officiating flock. So I guess my closing thought to you is, I try to bring up the best shepherds I can find for today, but now go forward and take care of the flock. Change the culture and let it begin with you.
That's awesome stuff. I want to just close with this. I got remarried 15 months ago, and 4 weeks ago, my wife gave birth to a little boy, Stone. So we're not getting much sleep, and I was shocked you asked me to do this, knowing that I'm coming in here on an hour and a half. But I now have a 15-year-old, a 14-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 4-week-old that live in my home. And I know I don't have the strength all the time to be who I need to be in that house. And I look to men like this, and now 2 others that I've gotten to know today, as examples. Find the men in your life, find the women in your life that you have to look at and pour into it and lean into it. This guy's been there for me. This guy's always been there for our family for 40 years. These 2 gentlemen right here who put their faith out there in front of you today after years and years of opportunities on a national scale to show people what their talent looks like. Now that you know what their heart looks like, lean into it. That's what I try to do. So I'll be calling you, bro. Trust me, I'm going to need it. Thanks for letting me be here.
CT, thank you so much, man. Appreciate you being here, dude. Love you.